All right, gang. So we are rolling. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our viewers here on Zoom. We have a few. Welcome to those who are going to join on Facebook Live, on whatever page you're on. I appreciate you being here. My guest is somebody who inspires me a lot. And I was thinking, man, it'd be really cool to bring on Dan Edwards and have another chat, because every time we talk, I feel like I learn a lot and I do better, and I just become, we had that first time we talked when I was in London, and we were at that. So let me just do this. I'm a little off track already. A COVID brain. I want to introduce my special guest, Dan Edwards. He's the founder, creator of Parkour Generations. He's based in London, and he is a movement expert, a guru. He's a personal development, let's say, a big inspiration to me in that department. So Dan Edwards, welcome. Thank you, sir. How you doing, man?
Carl, it's a pleasure to be here. It's always good to chat to you, man. Your energy is always inspiring to me as well, and the work you do around the world. Helping people with Parkinson's and helping people regenerate their movement and get their life back in that way that's the true inspiration, man. That's super cool. People doing that kind of work is really really awesome, and we need more of that. So keep doing what you're doing. You're the inspiration, dude.
Well, you're very kind. Thank you very much. When it really comes down to it, I like to surround myself with people who I can resonate with, people who care about other people. And, you're one of those people. And thankfully, I also know Dr. Emily Splickle, who's the reason I met you, because I came to sub teaching for her in London.
Yeah,
It's going to be 5 years this August, man.
yeah, that's right.
5 years. I
Yeah,
can't believe
amazing.
it. But it was really great because, man, that was a great event. That was just like at another level. And so
Yeah, that was a
that, and I,
rendezvous event, right? That was really good.
it was so good. And then I also really enjoy being, the least knowledgeable person in any situation or room or whatever, because but I can learn anyways. Whether it's that, I don't know as much as everybody else or just from other people. So it's another reason why talking with you is always really good for me. So maybe this is somewhat self-indulgent on my.
I know, man. I always learn a lot from you, and watching your seminars on the work you do is always incredibly useful. So, I mean, you're very much a specialist in that area, and we, with parkour and with movement, we try and help all types of people around the world, all populations, no matter their age or ability or whatever. But and we have good success. But seeing specialists do their stuff, is always really useful for us. And we learn a lot from you and people like you, and then we incorporate those ideas and adapt them and try and use them to benefit, and even more people. So no, we learn a lot from you as well, man.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yes. So, the first time we talked, and by the way, where were we? We were at upstairs in that place with the elevator that sings going up pitch when you go up, and then the voices, the pitch goes
Mm-hmm.
down. That was like I rode that elevator like 10 times after you left that day. It
Yeah,
was so
it's pretty
cool.
cool.
What was the name of that place?
It's the Royal Festival Hall in London. It's on the South Bank, so it's kind of a big sort of public space that's used for exhibitions and events, and you just use it for meetings or whatever. So it's a really cool venue. Yeah, and it's actually sort of around that area is where kind of parkour started in the UK. Was training in the spaces immediately around that, which is why we know that area very well.
That's cool. That was fun. Well, when we were talking that day, we kind of lead into a conversation here about something in particular. We started talking, well, mostly about becoming the best version of yourself. I just love the information that you share about that and your mindset behind it. And one of the things is I've discovered since then, but it's based on that, is, if we can find a vehicle that causes us to make that decision to consciously move forward, move better. And I don't even necessarily mean physically moving, although it's a big advantage for the brain and self-confidence and everything. The role, and we were doing it there. In fact, we were I'd still like to do this someday. Hashtag, and then an actual program too, Parkour for Parkinson's. Is we had people at your place at Chain Store Gym doing some, it's basic level parkour stuff, but people
Yeah.
with movement disorders. We have a gentleman here, Joel, says he has ataxia. Ataxia is a unique, uh, well, like anything, any diagnosis or neurological disorder, it affects people uniquely differently.
Mm.
Um, but the bottom line though is, we had people with Parkinson's there, generalized dystonia, somebody with multiple sclerosis was there. We came in, and for a lot of them, those objects they had to get either over it, under it, around it, or through it. That was a challenge, especially up front.
Yeah.
But after they do it like 10 times, they walk through the front door better. It, I mean, that kind of stuff actually helped with something as simple, and simple doesn't always mean easy, but something as simple as walking through a doorway without having to stop because you're not sure if you're going to hit the frame or not. And that's an actual thing a lot of times with people with movement disorders is, can I cross over this threshold? Can I go through that door? Is it where I think it is? Am I going to trip? Am I going to fall? And so the parkour was so much fun. And in my very long-winded bypass tangent here, what I'm actually trying to get around to is, how have you seen parkour movement positively affect people in various populations? I know we talked about kids. You can go wherever you want with this, but even like science and math scores increasing because of how the brain has to work, right? And
Mm.
think when they're coming upon these objects. Tell us more about this.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it. We've taught parkour around the world for the last sort of 15, 16 years now, I guess, and we've talked to pretty much every sort of demographic you could imagine, from 1 year old to from kids that can barely walk to people in their 90s to elite athletes, to sort of couch potatoes who've never done any kind of training, to people with physical disabilities, people with mental health issues, soldiers, everyone, any person you can imagine, really. And parkour obviously is adaptive in it's a concept. The parkour is a concept of movement and adapting and improving your movement to overcome a challenge or an obstacle. And that's it, pretty much. That's what parkour is, right? And from a functional point of view. So it's immediately applicable to anyone. And we see any demographic that it's introduced to, that people in that demographic can and will benefit from it. And the obvious reason is that parkour and movement practice in general is, as you said, the body mind, the body and mind. It's an adaptive organism that we have, that we are, and it is a very simple adaptive organism. It's very complicated, but as you say, simple doesn't mean it's basic. It's very simple in that it if you don't use it, you lose it. It's very simple, the body and mind. If you practice something, you will retain it, you'll get good at it. And if you don't, your brain body will excise it and will be like, well, I don't need that, I'm not going to use it. And you see that in neurology, in terms of the brain, parts of the brain that aren't used, they shrink and they become, or the brain will repurpose them for other uses. But if you don't use it, you lose it. So what we have seen is that anyone who practices movement, and when I say that, I mean just tries to improve their movement sophistication in whatever way, they will see benefits across their, beyond just their movement ability, because everything you do is movement, speech, thought, everything is based on movement. So if your movement skills and your coordination, your spatial awareness, and your strength, your agility, all these sort of things, if they increase, then your ability to do every other thing will also be impacted and improved. And it's nothing new, that the whole idea of mens sana in corpore sano, that this very old Greek concept of like strong body and a strong mind, and not only Greek but Middle East, Asia. Humanity has understood this concept of being physically and mentally healthy, and that benefiting both the body and the mind, and the soul or spirit, or whatever you talk about there. Humanity has understood that for a long, long time. So it's nothing new. It's just that parkour is really the reason I really like parkour as a vehicle for it is that it's directly and immediately applicable to anyone, anywhere. You don't need any special equipment. You don't need any special venue or space. It's just your body and the surroundings you've got. And from there you begin and you start your work, and you will see improvements. So yeah, we've seen huge physical improvements in people. We've seen parkour push the boundaries of what sports science thought was possible for humans. It's definitely
Yeah.
expanded the possibilities of, sports science has had to change and adapt to fit, to absorb parkour in a way, to go, oh wow, these guys are disproving a lot of the stuff we thought was the case. So that's at the high level. But at the other level, yeah, just seeing kids, we have so much evidence from kids in schools that are introduced to parkour that their problem solving skills, their lateral thinking skills evolve as well as a result of solving physical problems in training. So we know the benefits of it, both physical, mental, spiritual, social, emotional, confidence, all that sort of stuff. And we just try to find more ways to adapt it to any new type of person that we encounter.
Man, that's great. That's great. My mind is going a lot of places right now. So let's talk about this. You taught it all over you've traveled all over the world for years, right? You've been all over the place. I thought I traveled a lot, and then I thought, man, Dan is everywhere. No, it's cool though.
I tried. Not much in the last year, of course, but yeah, I
No,
tried.
I haven't been anywhere. I haven't been on a plane in almost a year, but it's okay. So I do have a question here from somebody. Let me ask you this, not to put you on the spot, Dan. Have you ever encountered a person with ataxia?
I know. I mean, I'm no
I'm
expert, but I know a little bit about it. In that it's a nervous system condition where something is attacked and destabilizes the nervous system and the function of it. That can often be due to medicine and things like that. There's lots of things that can cause it, right? As you said, it affects different people differently. So I haven't had much experience with it, but I understand I understand what it is, I suppose.
Now I'm just gonna surmise. I can probably find evidence though. Is that this parkour would probably be beneficial, even if it's simple. Doesn't have to be easy. I mean, simple is like we said before. I learned a long time ago. Certain things are simple, but it doesn't mean they're easy. So I can only imagine that because we're all humans, we have nervous systems, several, peripheral, central, and others, and a brain that this is painting with a little bit of a broad brush here, but really when it comes down to it, most of the time, 90 something percent usually, if somebody's able to walk at least, parkour, other movements, it's going to help. Not just it's going to help the brain probably more than anything, I would say, because when you help the brain, then the brain helps you.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely right. So any physical problem, again, it's the whole use it and lose it idea. It's very simple, really. So if I equate it to a mental concept, so if you think about depression and mental health issues around that area, there's so much good evidence now that when people are depressed, what it really, a lot of the time, what it comes down to, rather than some sort of chemical imbalance in the brain, which is what it was thought to be for a long time, now they kind of understand it's actually down to the situation that brain is in. So does it have enough social connections? Does it have enough emotional support? Does it feel that it has purpose? All these things. And if it lacks those things, it's far more likely to become depressed. And if it has those things, it's far less likely to become depressed. So the way to not solve all depression, but the way to address a lot of people that have that that they're in that state, because it's a real thing, is to use the things that they're lacking. So if you're lacking connection, you're lacking purpose, you're lacking emotional support and friendship, those lost connections, find those connections, and you're more likely to address the problem of depression, rather than trying to solve it with drugs and things like that. Not that they can't be of use as well. So for the body is the same. If the body has a problem, you have a problem with the nervous system in some way, the solution is most likely, in my experience, going to be a body solution. It's not going to be to do with chemicals and drugs. It's going to be to do with the body retraining itself and learning how to counteract or at least mitigate the loss of control and the loss of function. And the way it does that is by using it by doing its functions. So, we know that mental
Right.
acuity drops as you get older. If you're not
Mhm.
using your mind for memory challenges and crossword puzzles and things like that, then your mental acuity will drop, and your memory will get worse and worse. But if you keep challenging it on a regular basis, daily, by doing those things like the Times crossword puzzle every day, there's much more chance, much more likelihood that your brain will stay active and stay focused, and stay at a high level of awareness. So, and function. So it's the same with the body. So anyone, I think, that has a kind of physical issue to do with the nervous system and control and things like that, exactly, it doesn't have to be complex, just like you say, but some kind of movement training is going to begin the healing process, because it's going to strengthen the functions of the brain and the body, through myelination and all that sort of stuff, and either repair it, or at least mitigate it, at least prevent the deterioration. So I would say, I'm no expert on ataxia, but I would say, from what I know, probably that is going to be a big part of the solution for someone with ataxia, will be movement practice.
Yes, yeah. I wanted to ask you that question because it came from Joel here. And Joel, are you and I are connected on Facebook? I think, aren't we? And if we're not, let's connect, um, or shoot me your email address in the chat, because I have some other things to answer your other question here, um, regarding my program. But I want to focus on Dan. But actually, when we talk about parkour, and I want to also get into adapt in a little bit here. I want to talk specifically about what it means, what it is, what you do, what the goals are. Um, Movement in general seems to help with, again, everyone is, if they're going to improve from movement, if any symptoms are going to improve of any kind of disorder or neurological disorders, what I mean, it's going to, everyone's going to be affected differently and uniquely, and maybe even the same person differently on a different day. One of the questions here, does your help program, thank you, Joel. Okay, I'll shoot you an email. Is Does your program help with tremors? I have things that definitely help with tremors, very, very much temporary relief. But if we were to look at movement in general, we look at, we have even drumming is movement, right? Well, we know the people who drum who have tremors of any kind, whether it's even, um, I have a tremor. Actually, it's positional dystonia in my left um, arm, and it only happens in one position, and it's right in the mid position. When I go a cup of coffee here, boom, it goes like this. Well, that's because I had repetitive impact forces for 35 years hitting the backbeat on a snare drum at literally thousands of gigs when I was a drummer for a living. And a
Yeah.
neurologist, just at dinner with a neurologist in New York City 3 4 years ago, and he looked, I got a glass of water and I'm shaking. He said, you have positional dystonia. I said, what? But it's true. So uh, the bottom line, though, is any kind of tremor, could be essential tremors, could be, is likely to also be diminished by moving. So moving, I'm getting back to this. So moving could be drumming, could be running, could be bicycling, could be swimming, could be parkour. Because I remember very specifically, in fact, I have videos at your gym in London of the first time I taught my program there, and the people who came, and the difference an hour before moving to an hour after move, well, at the beginning of moving versus an hour later, there are a lot of differences. Yes, they're temporary, but it helps in the moment, in a window of time, to have a better quality of movement in life. So I'm kind of answering a question here a little bit, but also I probably would have said it anyways. I think, I loved how you articulated about the body and the brain, use it or lose it. If somebody does something and they learn how to do it really well, and then they don't do it for a long time, chances are pretty likely that when they start doing it again, they'll they'll be good at it pretty soon if they try. Not like when they first learned it, because the neural firing patterns in the circuits are already there. I mean, they can be lost. I'm learning that there can be a disconnect, which I didn't know until pretty recently. But there's a good chance that a lot of those connections are still there. So you just do it, fire them up, boom. But what's interesting to me is this whole thing about spatial decision making, brain and movement together, using your brain to move, all the things that come in. Have you had experience with, let's say, anyone on the, we'll call it, because of the politically, well, the term, the politically correct thing, which I always want to do, but also the term now is autism spectrum disorder. So it's anything from what used to be called Asperger's disease, which is no longer called that to some neurologists or whatever. Have you had anyone come in? Because I've had good experiences with the little tiny parkour stuff I set up at my university gym, which I haven't been to in a year. Have you had any experiences there in that department, working
Yeah,
with,
absolutely.
let's say, a learning disability or autism type population?
Absolutely, a lot of kids in our kids programs, in the academies around the world. A lot of the kids, more and more of the kids, it seems, higher percentage anyway, seem to be on one of those spectrums in some way. And that's the thing, is that and they come in, and the coaches, obviously we train our coaches to learn how to work with people with those conditions, or people who are maybe at that part of the spectrum, and they uh, once they know how to work with them, then the kid or the adult will benefit. No doubt, they will benefit. You will see an improved. It takes maybe a little bit longer, but you will see over time an improvement in their coordination, in their focus, their ability to focus for longer periods of time. And again, as you say, it's only temporary, but everything's only temporary until you do it regularly enough that it becomes permanent. So if you make a small, like when you build a muscle and you work a muscle, it's a temporary change. If you do a lot of weightlifting and then you stop weightlifting, then for a period of time, then you'll lose that change. The
Hmm.
muscles they'll get weaker. So that's temporary. But if you keep weight training,
Yeah.
you maintain the muscle, so it stays there, so it becomes permanent. So there's no such thing as permanent, really. It's to do with what you're doing regularly. So if those kids come in and practice movement regularly with this, and parkour requires a focus of the body and mind, it will change their ability to focus. It will improve their focus, and it will improve their physicality across the board. Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think that's an important point, is to understand that everything and everyone is just on a spectrum, in a very big, very broad spectrum, and it's not to do with having a condition on necessarily. So when you're
Yeah.
born, when you're a toddler, you're at the low end of the spectrum in terms of coordination and spatial
Hmm.
awareness and balance and all those things, right? You could fall over, you have problems walking through doorways, whatever, you can't stand up. And when you're very, very, very old, you're also at the low end of the spectrum, probably when you're like 90s and you're 100 years old. There are a few exceptions, but most people, yeah, again, they've lost some stability, they've lost some spatial awareness, they've lost some proprioception. So they're going back down to that spectrum. And elite athletes are at the high end of the spectrum a lot of the time, at the far end of the other end of the spectrum, in terms of their coordination and their balance and their spatial awareness. So everyone is on that spectrum, and you move up and down that spectrum throughout your life. So when you're a kid, you're at the low end, when you're a toddler, and then you become a teenager and you start getting pretty high at it, and then you become an athlete and a professional, and what you do, you become very high, and then you get older, or you get injured, and maybe you go back down again, and you recover from your injury, and you go back up again. You get Parkinson's, and you sort of go down, and then they come and see you, and they do some regeneration training, and they go back up. So it's constantly, I think that's a key thing to
Excuse
keep
me.
in mind, because that stops us sort of judging our state and judging our condition as like, this is who I am. It's
Hmm.
just who you are now.
Hmm.
So with practice, or with training, or with rehab, or medical care, or whatever, you can go back up the spectrum or move to where you want to be. So there should be no judgment in being anywhere on any spectrum. It's just a question of, this is where you are now. Where would you like to be, or where can we get you to? I think it's a really important point to keep in mind in terms of movement practice in general, and something we've learned through working with people in the fitness industry, the movement industry, and the sports industry for the last 15, 20 years, is exactly that point. Everyone can get better,
Hmm.
and everyone can do something about whatever situation they're in.
Love how you put that. Another thing too, I think it's important to point out, um, nothing defines us. I mean, we can define ourselves, I guess, if we want to, but if we have Parkinson's, that we're a person. Well, we have
Exactly.
Parkinson's. If we live with autism, well, that's it. It's not who we are. We're always people first. And
Exactly.
I like what you said is really interesting about that giant spectrum, because there's a new book that just came out about 2 weeks ago from a gentleman I know to a degree well enough to say hi, and his name is John Rady, Dr. John Rady. He's a Harvard
Yeah.
Medical School professor. He wrote the book called Spark.
Fantastic book.
Um, oh, it's a great book. People, I don't have it here to show you, but you want to get online, it's upstairs in my upstairs library. Uh, Spark is a really great book that really breaks down benefits of exercise to the brain, not just in the health of the brain, but in cognition, um, retention of what the test scores go up, you know, grades go up, and people in school, movement is better, mental health better, emotionally, people usually feel better by exercising. It's like nature's natural antidepressant because of what chemicals are produced in the brain, particularly BDNF. But he's also written other books. Uh, Go Wild is a great book about movement. But the new one is called ADHD 2.0.
Okay.
And
I've
the
read that.
first one he wrote, which is probably upstairs too, about that was 25 years ago, called Driven to Distraction. Yeah, it's upstairs. So he told me last year when I was talking with him, actually it was on an interview, he was getting this other book ready. Well, it came out 2 weeks ago, and I read it. I've read it twice already. This thing is like, this defines me. I'm totally ADHD. So was my dad, and so is my son. But in the examples he talks about in the book, we can choose to make this a blessing to us rather than a curse. My son has definitely done that. I can brag now, say MD PhD, right? I mean, he has hyper focused on stuff. I've never seen anyone with a work ethic like him, and
Mm.
he's a really nice guy. He's another one. I got to tell you, man. It's not just because he's my son, but I mean, I talk with him, I feel very much like I do when I talk with you and some other people, because he has this outlook of similar as, this doesn't define me. I know I forget stuff. I don't know I can barely tie my shoes, but he can do surgery on people. So it's interesting. But these things can be, whether it's a person with autism, it's a person with anything. I'm not saying that Parkinson's or Alzheimer's is a blessing. No, but that's different. It's almost like a different category, because that can come on later, right? It will come on later. You weren't born with Parkinson's, but we may have difficulty functioning in what is the, if you will, and I hate doing this, the normal. Or what is the normal?
Exactly.
You
Exactly.
know what is the normal? Who decided what normal is? And why do the doctors have all these normal charts? I get some of them, but we have a brain, and if we get it working, like, I think, like what you do there, what you've done for people is amazing. It's amazing. Tell us, if you don't mind, what is the ADAPT program? I mean, I kind of know, but I'd love the people watching to learn about this from you.
Adapt is, I mean, we do a lot of different sort of education programs, and Adapt stands for Art de Déplacement and Parkour Teaching. So Adapt is specifically the coach education program we have for training parkour practitioners in becoming and how to become a coach, teacher. A lot of it is coach education and coach science, and really understanding communication and emotional intelligence and how people work, and therefore becoming a better coach. So that was our first program that we ever created like 12, 13 years ago. It is now global
Yeah, that's great.
coaching education for parkour. It's delivered in something like 45 countries around the world, and
Wow, dude.
it's really interesting and very intensive education program, and very challenging, but it means that people love it and they grow and they learn and they have really powerful experiences on those courses. So that was our main education one. Yeah. And we have other education programs like Parkour Fitness Specialist, which is more about looking at the that's more designed for fitness professionals who want to understand the parkour methodologies of movement and incorporate that into their training programs. So that's a different stream of education. And then we have various sort of continuing professional development courses that branch off both those, such as how to teach parkour to older people, or how to teach parkour to people with physical disabilities, or whatever. So, and all the various, populations and demographics out there and how it can apply. So we've learned that the way to impact more people around the world is that we can only have a certain impact in terms of our time, in terms of, because it's just us. So if we then taught more people how to teach well, that would exponentially increase the amount of people that could benefit from parkour, which is why we created the coaching programs very early on, really, or as early as we could, because we knew we'd have more reach that way, by touching 100 teachers. If I train 100 teachers, they go out and train 100 people each. That's a lot more people than I can reach by myself. So yeah, it made a lot of sense to us.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's great. And actually, this might sound, I'm kind of going in reverse here. For anyone who's watching, in case they don't know, if you were to tell them what is parkour, do you mind just telling them about that just a little bit, and then I have a couple questions for you from people who are watching.
Yeah, I mean, parkour is a movement. But at the end of the day, it's a movement practice. So it's a way of training your body and therefore your mind as well, through functional, practical movement, through your surroundings, over terrain, overcoming obstacles. It could be rural, it could be urban, it could be whatever. It could be high off the ground, it could be on street level. It doesn't matter. It's about what can I do with my body to solve these movement problems and challenges, and in that way, it also challenges the mind. It requires a lot of integration of body and mind, because you won't necessarily begin that way, but you will end up pushing the limits of what your body can do. And in that very process of pushing the limits, your mind must be very much engaged with it to give you the focus and to put you in that zone, that flow state that is required for optimal performance. And parkour puts you into that flow state very quickly during training. And it's not something like many sports you can play and you want to be in a flow state. So you can play football and you want to be in flow because it makes you a better football player, but you can play football without being in flow. Whereas something like parkour, the difference might be that you can't really do parkour for any length of time without being in flow. So it's not optional. You will be in flow more of the time. And it's been seen that flow states, are the optimal state of mind for a human being in terms of happiness, but also the optimal state of mind in terms of performance, in terms of your body and mind being one. So parkour does that, really. It's kind of a long-winded way of saying that parkour is a way to find flow through movement challenges and through overcoming movement situations in your environment.
Can you tell us, just in case anyone knows or doesn't understand completely, how do you define flow? I mean,
So
I
the
have an
flow
idea,
state,
I'm familiar, but if you could just elaborate on that a little bit, that'd be great.
yeah, it's most people, well, everyone knows it because everyone's probably experienced it at some stage in their life. But flow state, so in athletics, they would typically call it being in the zone, or peak performance is sometimes known as, or in Japanese it might be called like mushin, sort of, this no-mindedness state. But it's basically, the flow state is where your sense of self and sense of time disappear. And you are immersed so fully in an activity that you no longer have any fears or concerns or sort of self-oriented thoughts. It's just you performing the activity in perfect harmony. So people find it when they, great sportsmen will find it when they're at the peak of their abilities in a game. They will suddenly find that they're just performing exceptionally well. Musicians, when they compose or play, writers, when they get into the zone, anyone, any carpenters, any accountants, anyone can find the zone in that flow state. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi called it flow state. He was the first psychologist to sort of term it flow. And since then, it's been heavily studied scientifically and is now understood to be the optimal state of performance. So yeah, you want to be in that state because it's when you're truly kind of happy, and it's normally when you're doing something you really love doing, because you need to be dragged into it, you need to be immersed into it and kept in it. So if it's something you love doing, you're more likely to find flow. It could be cooking, it could be anything, but one of the triggers for flow, and there are many, but one of the the powerful triggers for it is risk. So if you're in a risky situation, your brain will kind of shunt you into a flow state. It will basically shut down your prefrontal cortex and the thinking part of the brain, the slow thinking part of the brain. It will shut that down because it's not quick enough to respond to the situation, and it will give you over to the faster thinking parts, the subconscious part, the preservation parts, really, and that is where you can sort of touch on a flow state just momentarily. So, for example, if you fall down some stairs, suddenly you can go from thinking about your work that day, and then you trip and you fall down the stairs and you end up at the bottom of the stairs without being hurt. Your body does some amazing stuff on the way down and you can't remember how, but you grab this and put your foot there, and then at the end you end up at the bottom of the stairs uninjured, and you think, how did I do that? I have no memory of controlling those movements, but my body kept me alive. That is an example of a very intensive momentary flow state brought about by the brain's immediate awareness of a risk, of a danger to it. So risk is one way to do it. And in parkour, there is this idea of consequence. We don't practice, we're not danger seekers, but when you do parkour, because you're training and moving in an outdoor environment, typically, you are aware when you jump and when you climb and when you vault that part of your brain is aware that if I slip on this wall, it's going to hurt. It's probably not going to do a lot of damage, but it's going to hurt. I might bang my knee on the brick or whatever. And so you're more likely to be in that kind of focused state that brings you to flow, because you're aware that there's a consequence of making an error here. So parkour is very powerful at getting you into flow state. But there are many other triggers for flow. It doesn't have to be risk. But risk is one of the ones that we utilize a bit. Yeah.
I'm just putting this together with some research that I've been studying out of Stanford since about the first part of August last year. And so what you said is this just starting to click to me now. They talk about the brain, like we were talking maybe earlier or off camera maybe, about how all organs, and by the way, Jan Heller, I'm going to answer your question in a minute. And then I'll ask Dan his experience too. So let's go back here. Okay, so all organs change over time, but your liver, your kidney, your heart, it's not going to make a decision to change. But your brain is an organ, and that can make a decision to change because, well, that's how it works.
That's what it does.
We have the power of free will. The power of choosing to direct our attention. And so you can direct your attention. Like if I was to say to people watching, something I'm pretty sure you're probably not thinking right now, but you will be in about 10 seconds. How do your feet feel connected to the floor? Were you even noticing your feet? Probably not. So you just decided to direct your attention. So this self-directed, there's a name, self-directed adaptive plasticity is what the coined phrase is by Dr. Andrew Huberman. So if you choose risk, and this is really interesting to me because I've found myself doing this, especially when I'm mountain biking and going really fast. And keep in mind, I'm on Coumadin for blood clots. And if I hit something, I'm a bleeder. So to me, it's like a double risk, a double whammy. But you know what? I never thought about it. I'm in the zone then because I have to be.
Yeah.
I could be injured. I mean, seriously injured, not just, banged up or something like that. It could be bad. I try not to go too far with the risk. So I make a conscious decision to involve myself in a degree of risk that I figure I can handle anything that happens and come out alive and healthy. Yet the risk, the performance of it forces me into more of, I am one with it. I'm not thinking about my taxes. I'm not thinking about my car. I'm not thinking about anything other than getting through this.
Yeah.
I'm just making a comment here.
No, that's right. And the concept is the underlying concept that drives that is the idea of having skin in the game, right? So basically the human system, the body, brain, whatever, a human being is, and anything we create, we're very good at finding solutions if we have skin in the game. And by that, I mean, if we need to find solutions, like we really, really need to, we are very good at finding solutions when we're under pressure. And those pressures are, could be risk, could be whatever. But that's when we're very good at finding solutions. And you can see, the current situation is a prime example. Coronavirus, vaccines took 10 years, right? Up till now, it took 10 years to create a vaccine, they said.
Mm-hmm.
But now we've created vaccines in less than 1 year. And the reason is we needed to. So suddenly humanity had major skin in the game in terms of like, we need to create vaccines very, very fast. So suddenly the systems are ramped up, huge amount of money and resources and time and effort is put into that system, and you get a solution. So it's the same when you're engaging in mountain biking or any activity where the skin in the game is you might get hurt. You as a human being are very good at very quickly managing the variables and learning, to solve the problem so that you won't get hurt. Another example could be to illustrate the point, could be fighting arts and martial arts. If you look at the development of say karate as a martial art over the last 50 years, let's say, don't go into its sort of combative past, but say the last 50 years where it's been more sport, it hasn't really evolved a lot in terms of its evolution as a sporting construct, in terms of winning competitions and being effective in fighting, let's say. And then if you look at UFC and mixed martial arts, in 20 years, look at the evolution that's happened in mixed martial arts in 20 years, and how quickly they went from where they started to the fighters they produce now, which are just, you can't compare the two. And the reason is skin in the game. Everyone that got in the octagon, if they didn't learn pretty quickly, they got their asses kicked. So they adapted very, very fast. They had skin in the game. So it's that concept that underlies all human learning. The more skin in the game you've got, the better you will be at learning what you need to learn in order to navigate that situation. And it could be any situation. It could be emotional, psychological, physical, financial. The more you need to solve the problem, the more you will. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. Humans often need that. We often need to kind of, hit rock bottom in a way to realize this is how bad things can be. I need to change it. I need to find a solution. And often we'll leave it until that state before we start making these amazing changes.
Man, I as always, anytime we talk, I have like epiphanies. Like, I kind of knew this, but the way you just articulated, as always, is so eloquent and succinct. So I find myself, in fact, I was telling somebody the other day, they wanted to do a rehearsal for this presentation. Like, no, it's not my ego. Trust me. I'm not going to do it. I'll just do it when I do the presentation. I've never rehearsed for a presentation with other people. I've rehearsed on my back porch talking to imaginary audiences before I met you the first time. I rehearsed on my back porch for Dr. Emily because she threw me into this gratefully. Trust me, I was totally willing to go. I was like, yes. And so, but I didn't rehearse when I was there. I got there a couple of days before. I didn't practice. I'd done all the practicing. I'm just going to get up. I'm going to do my thing. What I'm trying to say is I work very, very, very efficiently and effectively under pressure.
Right.
Any kind of pressure. If the taxes are due tomorrow, I'll get them done today. Not yesterday, though.
Yeah, exactly. That's the point, right? Yeah.
Why do we have to do it? I could do them months earlier, but I won't do them. There are other things to be done. And so I'll do it when I do it, and it'll be just on time, and I'll get them in, and it'll be all fine. It's the mountain biking thing too. I found is interesting because I need that feeling of a challenge, a mental challenge, a physical, a coordination problem, to a navigation challenge. I really feel highly stimulated by that. So I have a quick question. I want to come back to this. My friend Jan Heller is watching. Hello, Jan. I haven't seen you in a long time, man, and I'd love to get back to Detroit. She's in the Detroit, Michigan area. She recruited so many people to my workshop. Without you helping like that, Jan, I don't think I've ever had anyone work that hard. So thank you. She asks, and I'm just going to say my part first. Have you experienced anyone who has dyslexia issues with dyslexia and any kind of have there been benefits of movement or parkour or anything to help this dyslexia. um, I have dyslexia. I don't know that I've done the right things moving wise because of a couple of health issues. That's if it's helped me. And I'm not saying that what I'm going to show you is actually even really, I'm going to surmise it works for some people. It works for me. You know how they taught you in school? Don't use your fingers like this. Well, if I do that, I can read and I read really fast, but I have to go in the right way. Otherwise, my eyes want to go backwards half the time. This is what I do. Now, I do find that after movement, I need less finger. I don't need to use my fingers as much after I've moved. All I can surmise again, and I could probably find data, is that it somehow stimulated brain activity so it just functions better. Dan, any experience with this?
Yeah, again, I mean, and it's again, I'll probably generalize it and say we've encountered people with everything you could possibly imagine. Probably has been in our classes or our courses at some stage. We've taught hundreds of thousands of people around the world. So, and it is exactly that. You will find that people that train more in their physicality, the more they work on movement. And when we say movement, we don't just mean repetitive, simplistic things such as push-ups or bicep curls and things. Not that there's anything wrong with them, they have their function. But if you're looking to improve the brain's ability, then you must challenge the body in terms of complexity of movement. So it must be a complex dynamic tasks that you're asking the body to do. And if you do that, if you challenge the complexity, whatever level the complexity needs to be to challenge that individual, then it's well documented, and John Ratey in his book Spark evidences this as well. A lot of his data is based on that sort of stuff. That after that burst of physical activity, the brain is at its most active and is generating new cells. And in fact, the only time the brain actually does engage in neurogenesis and the creation of blank cells, which can be used for anything, is in fact after movement. The 20 minutes after an intensive movement period is when the brain is building new cells. And it doesn't mean you're becoming more intelligent, but you have more capacity for intelligence because you're creating new cells. And we didn't think that was possible until sort of 10, 15 years ago, until the scientists realized that the brain neurogenesis happens throughout your whole life. So it's not just when you're your first few years of life that happens, and then that's it. So if you want to improve the brain's capacity to learn and to adapt and to overcome any condition you have, then the movement is going to help that, because you're going to create more brain cells after you move in that sort of 20-minute window after you've been moving. But the movement has to be complex enough that it challenges the body and gets the brain and body thinking. So think of it in terms of like movement problems and movement challenges rather than just exercise. Although exercise obviously is super good as well, because you need to work all the systems, the aerobic and all those systems as well. But the complexity thing is very important. So things like juggling, even or playing Jenga, or these sort of things that you may not think about as exercise, but actually they are an incredibly useful physical exercise tool, because it's improving your brain, your coordination, your which is your spatial awareness and all those sort of things, proprioception, so many good things. So all those things are super useful, and they will have a beneficial effect to probably almost any condition you have that is to do with the brain and body. So yeah, definitely worth doing.
So if I looked distracted during that, I wasn't. But I was looking for a video. I want to show this. So I won't start it yet, but if you can see this, everybody.
It's the gym.
This is at Dan's gym in London. This is who's messages coming in. Who's this gentleman standing here? I forget his Chris. Who's the guy? He works there. Chris Roat?
It's Chris. Chris or Blaine, as we know. Yeah, Chris
Blaine. That's right. Okay, yeah. So Blaine is helping people as they're actually if you look like right here and here, you'll see people standing on a beam or a pipe. Right. So this is Ian. This gentleman here is Ian. He has Parkinson's. bilateral deep brain stimulation he had. So if I press play, I'll just show you real quick. Um, this is an example of, he gets off of here. Now, he had a terrible time going through, if I remember correctly, the door. So there's some obstacles. Now, he chose to go under this. He could have gone over, he could have gone around. He went under because that was a challenge for him. And watch this. This last one is kind of fun too. Actually, I have another one. I'll show you. It's right next to this. Um,
He's
obstacle
moving
course.
confidently though, yeah.
Yeah. This is another one where Omotola, who's actually, he lives north of London. There's Omotola. She lives in London somewhere. So she climbed over the wall. Then she decides to go through this. I'm so sorry about all the messages here. I don't understand what's going on. She decides to go through. She goes under. So I have the split screen here with two different videos. But now she climbs up on this thing. And I think on this one, she was saying the alphabet backwards too, because we wanted her to do some kind of a cognitive skill. She jumped over the thing at the end. She wasn't doing that like a half an hour earlier. She was barely getting over it. So, and there, that was a really nice, smooth finish over that wall. What I love about this is that there's so many benefits. So let's go back to this type of movement involved, whether it's dyslexia, whether it's a movement disorder, whether it's just anything. We're all humans. We have brain and nervous systems. Those kind of things get the midline of the brain, which typically in a person with autism, well, it didn't. The two hemispheres didn't connect well, and so we can help all people to. You're going to create more connections between hemispheres when you're doing a parkour type of thing, like going through, over, up, around, add on a cognitive training thing. And not only does it help with that neural firing patterns, cross brain patterns. Well, you know how they talk about crossing the midline of the body, it could be a martial arts or anything. That's really good for the two hemispheres, right? But it also helps, like you say, you're working the brain in a different way so that it works in a different way when you're not working it like that, right? So dyslexia has, I've seen it diminish in some people. I've seen focus become, well, in improved focus for ADHD, ADD, and I'm one of them. I exercise. The best time for me to write part of my book or any of it is after I exercise. So I just wanted to show that and comment on it, and kind of just, I'm not saying nearly as well as you did in articulating though how just doing push-ups is one thing, but going through over obstacles, past obstacles, that's a different deal, man.
Yeah, it's
Decision,
just
you
it's
have to
just
make
more
a
holistic.
decision. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
more holistic. There's more to it, and that's in a way all it is doing is it's using the body for its function, its intended function, and it's the same. You think about machinery, right? So think about a car or a motorbike or whatever. The most machines, if you use them for their intended function, they last longer. They stay well because you're using them. So you're using things are being oiled, things are being obviously you've got some wear and tear. The human body has that too, but it will last longer. If you stop using a car or a bike and leave it fallow, doing nothing for a few months or whatever, you probably will have problems when you try and restart it up, right? So the human body is the same. If you use it for its intended function, then it tends to strengthen the whole thing. All the systems get better, and that's because the body, a human being is one big system of systems.
Oh yeah.
So it needs all of it to be being used the whole time. So if you isolate certain systems and work on them, yes, you can see specific improvements in those systems, but that might have very little carryover to the whole system. So, just training bicep curls, for example, yes, it might give you bigger biceps, but it might not make you any stronger functionally in terms of moving your body over terrain, because
Mhm.
it's a very isolated movement. Whereas if you move your body over terrain instead of doing the bicep curls, you will get stronger at moving the terrain. And that's because that's what the body is designed to do. The function of the body, without question,
Excuse me.
is to move from A to B, and to get your brain through your environment safely and easily and well and efficiently. That is what the body has evolved and adapted to do. So if you do that with the body, you're giving the body its nutrition, the nutrition that it actually wants. This is what
Mhm.
it's designed to do. A car is designed to drive. The human body is designed to move over terrain. That's not a questionable fact, because that's evolution. It can do many other things, and there are many specific functions like the bending, that of the arm, a bicep curl. That is a function of the arm. That is the function of the elbow. That's what it does. It hinges, but there's
Yeah.
just a function. That's the function of that.
Yeah.
The function of the human body is to move. So the more movement you do, holistic movement, the more you will improve multiple systems at once, and that strengthens the system of systems, which has a carryover effect on all the other systems because they all get dragged up with it. So
Yeah.
the more holistic your training can be, the better in our understanding, and that's definitely our approach.
Yeah. Everything is connected to everything else. Um, One of the first things that John Rady told me when I was talking with him, he says it in his books too. What you just said just reminded me. He says the human body is designed to move. If we go back tens of thousands of years before farming, and we had to hunt and gather, you were moving because you had to move or you'd die.
Yeah.
Farms came along, and people still move to a degree, but we don't really need to move that much now if we don't want to. I mean, you can get an Instacart groceries delivered to your house from your phone, from an app. Why go to the store? I
Yeah.
mean, with COVID, I can understand why some people might do that, but still, exercise. By the way, speaking of COVID, be careful out there, folks, because it's not a joke. It's real. I had it. I've never been sicker in my life, and I'm still recovering, but I'm doing much better now. Um, Exercise, movement is one of the things that can help you to fight it off, or if you get it to, you know, not have as bad of a case. And of course, everyone's different. But these two books, too, I just want to show. I was talking with Dr. Bredesen, the author of this book, The End of Alzheimer's. It's a bestseller. His new book is this, The End of Alzheimer's Program. He says, well, just in case anybody wonders, I just want you to know, Dan is right. And Dan says it better than anybody, actually, who I know. But we are made to move, and we need to move because that's a nutrition that our body does need. Movement is like feeding the body. Yep.
Yeah.
So
100%.
do you one of the things that I remember you telling me the first time I met you, because at that point in time I was really into running, and I still do some, although with the new hip, I have to be careful where I do it. I do it on a softer surface, so I'll go in a park or a field on the grass, and it's great. But I also try to get some obstacles in there, right? Because they got all the playground stuff, and there's never any kids on it during the day when I go, so I would climb over stuff and around, and then keep running, go up a hill, go under this thing, go over the other. But when I'm running, especially trails, which I love, and I use this also to some degree with my bicycle. I remember you talking about using, and I'm going to paraphrase, and you can correct me, please. It's like using the energy. You're connected to the earth. Gravity is our friend, right? People think it's not our friend. Well, if I wanted you to be the pitcher on my baseball team, um, you pitch really well and you pitch and boom, right over home plate. How about if I put you in a, a thing that pulls you up off the ground now, and then I say, hey, pitch and be accurate. So can you throw fast and accurately? No, it's not going to be the same. Gravity is our friend. And we can it's almost like using gravity, using the earth and energy to help propel us forward. And I don't know how you said it to me, but when you said it, when I got back, there's these trails I love to run with a lot of hills. I started using it and thinking of using the earth. I felt like I was actually more in a flow state then too. Of course, there was a little bit of risk involved too. I could have tripped over a root and fell over the cliff, but it seems like. Can you comment on that for me? Do you mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, when we think about movement, we're thinking about a combination of energy and force that you create and generate from your body, So self-generated force, from like your muscles exerting a force, and then what are called free forces in physics, such as momentum, gravity, elastic, recoil. These kind of forces that happen, and they're free in a way. You don't have to do anything; you get them automatically, right? So
Mhm.
if you're running downhill, then gravity is going to help you run faster because it's pulling you, right? You're pushing with you're running, so your muscles are driving you, but you're also being assisted by gravity. This is a free force. So um and as much as possible, if you want to think of, if you want to really get into movement, you should be trying to understand that your movement as a human being, within the world we live in, and all, as you say, all things are a system, and even beyond us, we're connected to the systems around us. So you got to think, how can I utilize all of those systems to maximum effect? It's actually a very sort of Taoist approach, I suppose, in terms of, it's like, trying not to run upstream kind of thing, right? Trying not to swim upstream, swim with the river, and it makes life much easier. So, for example, if you're running or moving in parkour, when you're moving and using obstacles, we don't see the obstacles as obstacles. We see them as stepping stones, and things that will enable and make our movement easier, and allow us to get to places. So we don't see a wall as a barrier. We see it as something that's going to allow us to get higher. If we can get up it, we can be at a higher space, and that will allow us to get somewhere else or whatever. So but obviously you're generating the power with your muscles, but you're using these free forces at the same time. So it's kind of like a dance. And then you get the question of, well, who's in control? And if you think that analogy of dance, if when you're dancing with someone, who's in control between the two people? Or if you're dancing alone, are you in control, or is the music in control? And it's kind of both, right? The music directs your actions, and you respond to the music, but you're choosing the action at the end of the day, so you're in control. But the music is also, so it's a dance, right? It's a combination, and
Yeah.
and movement is the same. It's a combination of these self-generated forces and the natural free forces that are out there. And in terms of running, that might be as simple as, don't necessarily just run on like where people have told you to run. Allow your body to go where it thinks it wants to go, that will make it easier for it to pass that bit of terrain.
Mhm.
Trail running is great, right, for that, rather than running on roads, which is not natural, definitely. Running in trails and going through forests, and even going off trail and just running through forests or fields or whatever. This will both provide a lot more free forces, a lot more variety of the free forces, because of the gradient undulations and things like that, and the surface changes and all that. But it will also challenge your brain and body more in terms of coordination and balance and things like that. So it will actually work your systems, more of your systems, which will give you a better effect. And it will require you to be more mentally focused as well, because if you're running off piste, let's say, or off track, you have to be aware of where your feet are going, and you have to be in tune with your environment. Otherwise, you can slip, or run into a tree or whatever. So
Yeah.
it requires you to be more engaged. So it's probably
Mhm.
going to be more flow. It's probably going to be more enjoyable than just running around blocks of running around your block on the road. Go running through a forest and go off the path in the forest, and you'll probably find it much more enjoyable. And you'll probably feel invigorated, because you'll be so engaged in the actual task of trying to find a way through these trees, for example,
Mhm.
that you will forget about being tired. You won't be focusing so much on what your body's sort of experiencing in terms of difficulty. You'll be focusing on the task. And again, that selflessness, that flow state, will allow you to run further and easier, and you'll be less tired, probably. So it's just about whatever movement you're doing. It's about trying to find ways that that are more holistic in their approach, and that's more natural, and less likely to induce less repetitious. So which is often, as you said, with the drumming, it's simple repeated movements normally that cause so many injuries in humans, and a lot of those are pretty modern inventions, sports
Mhm.
inventions, if you think about it. Before
Yeah.
sports existed, or before uh, simple tasks like, say, agriculture or things like that existed, hunter-gatherer society, and what we were for hundreds of thousands of years, the variety of movement that humans had was throughout the day was a lot more, because they were just doing whatever they needed to do in that particular time. There was no like 3 hours spent running, or 5 hours spent swinging a tennis racket, which would give you the tennis elbow.
Yeah.
So
Right. Yeah.
the variety, I think, is super, super important. Variety of movement, and
Yeah,
variation of movement.
I think so too. Actually, I think it's John Rady who said this, that the average person in hunter gatherer moved about 14 miles a day. So kilometers, 20 maybe. Whereas now
Yeah,
we're counting
about a nice
steps on our
movement.
watches, 10,000 steps, which might be, I don't know, 4 miles, or I don't even know what it is. It depends on the person and their stride length. But people weren't counting steps back then. They were just trying to stay alive and go get their food, and 14 miles a day average. Um, yeah, I find that I think if I was to give advice, because I'm discovering this myself and the advantages of this myself. For example, some of the workout or exercise I like to do, and I don't really think of it as a planned workout, is, well, today I've got a bunch of stuff to do and I'm going to do it. It's going to be outside and I have about a foot of snow to get rid of. I could use the snow blower, but I'll probably be using the shovel, and I have a big driveway and it's going to keep me moving. Now, is that complicated? No, but it's something. But in the spring, though, I'm putting up fence around the garden. I have a garden every year. I'm carrying stuff. I'm climbing over things, and it's not the same as parkour, but it is something that
It
I
is.
get a lot of movement up. I live on a river. We put in the dock every year. That is a workout because it's a heavy dock and it's big and it comes in many pieces. We built it ourselves, put it in, taking it out in the fall, and so I really enjoy that, and I feel that when I'm running trails and I'm jumping over logs, trees that fell down, and I'm, again, a lot of times it's not so bad, but then you come across these trees that they're across the trail and you can't jump over them because so you have to find a way around them or through some branches. I function better after
Mm.
those type of exercises.
Yeah, and it's also worth mentioning that the complexity thing in terms of movement. When you say shoveling snow, it's not complex. It actually is in the movement terms. So it doesn't. When we say complexity, it doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be like a triple Sukahara backflip aerial. It's not that kind of complexity.
Mhm.
That's a different type of complexity. The type of complexity. So when you're talking about, if you're doing functional tasks like shoveling snow or chopping wood or whatever, carrying hay bales, the complexity and the variety of movement there is more than most of the current sort of fitness and training traditional fitness paradigms and traditional sports paradigms, because they reduce the variables in their environments and their sort of in those programs, sports and stuff. They're aiming to reduce variables as much as possible. So they'll reduce the variable of even ones you don't really think about, such as temperature or surface or grip, that or light. They will remove all those variables. They make them standard and uniform, and then they will remove the fact that you have to, when you're shoveling, you've got to get torque with both hands right on the shovel in different
True.
ways.
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
and twist. They won't do that. They'll take that out. So you just lift something. You just do a deadlift and you stand up. It's not the deadlift or weightlifting is bad, but it's, if you think about those movements, have had all the complexity stripped out of them.
Hmm.
What they've
It's
done is
true. Yeah.
they've removed
Yeah.
all the variables and they've made tiny parts of it. They've gone into detail on tiny parts of human movement, and therefore that's where they find the complexity. But they've removed all the other variables of complexity. So
Hmm.
you shoveling snow is actually a very good, healthy, functional, complex movement task, because you're not going to do any two shovels exactly the same. You're always shifting your position, your stance, how much you're bent over, the twist, the
Oh,
grip, how much
yeah.
you're putting it in to get the snow up. All these things change every time. So there's huge variety in that process.
Hmm.
Where if you just do 100 push-ups, there's no variety. Every push-up is the same as the last one. So arguably the shoveling snow for training is going to develop more functional, practical fitness benefits than doing 100 push-ups. Which is
Oh,
why you get this idea of farm strength and these individuals who are just super strong, really effective, powerful individuals, never been to a gym in their life, but they work on a farm all their life, and they've
true.
got this
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
amazing strength that comes from the huge variety of movement they're putting themselves through every day, functional, practical movement tasks. So, don't do yourself a disservice with the shoveling the snowman. That's really good. It's really great work and very complex movement.
I appreciate you saying that. I hadn't really thought about it till now. You've got the hinging, the bent over, the stance, and a lot of rotation
Yeah.
because,
And every time, every movement is unique, right? Every
yeah,
step forward you take, you change slightly. So
yeah,
there's more complex in that. The brain is working more than just
that's
racking out
true.
pull-ups or push-ups or even just running on a road. The brain is working way more doing that shoveling task.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It is. Yeah. And then the way it's set up here is just I have to decide where do I want to put the snow because I have many options and all of them have an advantage and each one has a disadvantage. I just have to think of where's the best place for this shovel full of snow
Exactly.
or this
Those
boot.
micro decisions add to the complexity,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Um, I want to make a point here to people watching. Thank you, Amy. I got your comment. Amy Lindbergh is on. She's awesome. Amy, you're in the
Hey.
Carolinas. Is that right? I think. Um, Thank you. So we've talked about this before, and I just haven't been. Things have been. Life has happened, and there's so much going on. I mean, I have a lot of great things. I'm a grandpa now. My granddaughter's 12 weeks old today. Sorry, yesterday. Just warms my heart. I can't even tell you how crazy I am about her. But one of the things I'd like to do, especially because even before COVID, I had diminished my travel a lot, and I kind of have this idea of touching 10, 20 trainers to start with and have them start to teach stuff in different areas to reach more people. um, is I need to set up some kind of a facility with this type of thing in it, parkour, because parkour for Parkinson's or parkour for anyone, I feel it's in my opinion the single best thing that a person can do to probably improve. Okay, North Carolina. Sorry, Dan, and everybody. I thought so. Okay, thanks for clarifying that, Amy. Um, and it's something I'd like to get into my education, which before I do, I'll ask you to maybe look at it for me and give me your permission. Just a piece about the advantage of this and hopefully drive traffic to your way too. Because anytime I teach something, as Amy knows, she was in a workshop and other people, we give credit where credit's due. We want people to go check out their stuff. But because there's so many things out there and it's really important to do something you like to do, but try things because you might find something you like to do that you didn't think you'd like doing or never even knew about it.
For sure.
And then things like parkour and is how you move the body and how it affects the brain. I mean, this I don't know if there's research on parkour and Parkinson's or parkour and any other movement disorder. Do you? Because I know it helps. I know at least it helps to manage things, manage movement, manage some symptoms, and maybe slow disease progression. Do you know anything about that, Dan?
So at the moment, the where parkour is in terms of research is that it's mainly still being studied from a just a simple sports science point of view. So sports science is still trying to understand how parkour works. So at the moment,
Okay.
it's still at that stage where it's looking at. So it hasn't really been looked at in terms of like scientifically, how can parkour fix this thing? We know from having taught thousands of people and anecdotal evidence and all those sorts, we know ourselves that it will help these things. But there have been very few studies on that yet because at the moment the research world is still looking in terms of like how do parkour athletes take the impacts they take and not get injured, for example. So they're still studying the impact absorption and landing mechanics of parkour to understand why parkour athletes are so much better at dealing with impact than any other type of athlete. About the most of the current studies that have been done in that world show that, for example, parkour landing techniques are about 4 times as efficient as the next best sports landing technique in
Yeah.
terms of absorbing impact. And the next best ones are things like basketball and stuff like that. But parkour is 4 times as efficient, right? So they didn't, before parkour came along, sports science would say if you did those things that we now do in parkour commonly, then you will get injured and or you will break yourself and you won't be able to continue doing sport. And we have disproved that. And now sports science goes, okay, if they can do that, then our science is wrong, and we need to go
Right.
back and amend that. And they have gone back and amended it, and now they go, okay, this is how they do it, and that means humans are able to take those forces, but only if they land like this, with this technique and this method
Yeah.
and this amount of practice before and all that sort of stuff. So that's the stage we're at with in terms of study of parkour. It's not really at the stage yet where it's been like how there aren't studies done whereby like how will parkour benefit this group of people and study that. That hasn't been got to yet because it's still
Okay.
early days.
Well, as I always say, I love research and I'll use it. But if I don't find it and I feel or know that something works, then we're going to use that too, because you got to
Cool.
think
Yeah.
outside the box. You have to be sensible about it. Don't be ridiculous and take an unnecessary risk that could kill somebody or hurt somebody. But sometimes we have to be our own researchers. And
Yeah,
there we
if it
go.
works, use it. And
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
I mean, if the founders of parkour hadn't have had that mindset, parkour would never have been founded, right? If the founders of parkour had listened to sports science at the time, or what they were told was possible, or whatever, they would never have done the things that disproved all that stuff. So parkour was
Yeah.
only created by people that didn't follow the science and didn't stick to. It's not that you shouldn't follow science, but they weren't limited to the limited science that they existed at the time.
Right.
They weren't aware of it, is the truth. So they just did these things and were like, oh, this works. And we knew it worked
Yeah.
empirically. We didn't have to read a book to say this is how we should land from a jump.
Hmm.
We knew it from doing hundreds of jumps on concrete from height. We realized this is how you must land if you want to survive, and if you want to get stronger and not damage your body.
Yeah.
And then science caught up and studied it, and we're like, oh yeah, this is why they do that. And then you sort of evidenced that this is how that works.
Hmm.
So exactly, sometimes you have to, if it works, use it. It's a very simple philosophy.
A lot of things, in the past where the science was wrong. Like,
Yeah, or,
and
or
it's
just
it's
not
okay though.
just incomplete, as all
Yeah,
science is.
that's a better way to put it. Incomplete. And it's okay because it's an evolution. We're always evolving as humans. We have people like you out there on the front line doing things, challenging people in ways they haven't been challenged before. Like two examples I can think of are the way scientists thought that the brain, when you were born, had a certain number of cells, and that was it, and then that's all you got. Use it or lose it. But now we know the brain can change. It can change itself. You can choose to train it to change itself, and you can keep learning things until the day you die. I mean, in most cases, according to John Rady and other researchers out there, I mean, you can always learn something new.
Yep.
So, and you can grow new brain cells. There are a couple different, only two areas they know of right now. They think that new brain cells can be grown: olfactory bulb and hippocampus. But there might be other areas. But we also know that the cerebellum can change very easily. It's a highly neuroplastic area. So they were not correct saying that it can't change itself. The other is like Sir Roger Bannister, right? The 4 Minute Mile. He did it.
Yeah,
It's
classic.
done. And then they had to rewrite. He rewrote history in 4 minutes, less than 4 minutes. He's still alive, isn't he? In England, I'm
That's, I
pretty.
don't know.
I'm
I'd
pretty
be
sure he's
amazed,
still
but
alive
possibly.
because yeah, he's in his 80s. Um, I was just looking him up. I don't know, a month or two ago. I said, oh yeah, he's maybe Dan knows him.
I don't know, unfortunately, but yeah, an amazing
Yeah,
figure. Yeah, the chain again. Yeah, evidence of one person that defied what people believed was possible at the time, and then within him doing that, within a very short time, tens of people and then hundreds of people had replicated the same thing. So it
yeah,
just evidence that we were being held back in some way by psychology. Everyone
true.
thought
Yep.
it was impossible, and therefore no one did it until someone did it, and then everyone else did it. So
Funny
it's
how
very
that
interesting.
is, huh? Yeah, it's funny how
Yeah,
that is.
fascinating.
Well, that breeds hope too. That's another thing before we sign off in a little bit. The new book I have coming out, and I'm not saying this to promote it. I'm just saying because it's not ready yet, but it'll be ready soon. The first chapter really has to do with hope, belief, and empowerment. They all go together. And when somebody moves even a little bit better, or thinks a little bit more efficiently, or in any way mentally, physically or whatever functions better. And especially if they feel like they weren't going to function better or they couldn't function better, it's even better. And then they do. I've seen it happen all over the world. I can't count the number of times I've seen somebody just go from hopeless and defeated and really didn't want to be with me, but somebody dragged them in to a workshop to, um, what do I want to say, optimistic, empowered, and unstoppable, because a little bit of hope occurred from a simple thing they did that they didn't think they could do that changes their life and the caregiver's life and other people's lives. Simple wasn't easy, but we made it easier so now they can do it.
Mm.
And whoa, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. And what you do, I know what you do affects people, and it's the same thing uh, for all humans. You know, if we can all function a little bit better, it usually breeds hope and it helps to inspire others. Maybe, but if at the very least we have hope, we're going to do better. We do better when we have hope and belief, and we feel empowered.
Yes, and like you say, it's a cyclical thing. So if you act, then if you take action, you're more likely to brush off the sort of the cobwebs of fear and despair and concern and limitations like that. You're more likely to blast through them, and then the more you blast them off, the easier it is to act. So it becomes a self-fulfilling positive spiral. But you have to act. You have to make the effort to act. So action brings hope, and then hope enables more action. So you get into a positive spiral rather than a negative spiral.
Yeah, the
Um,
spiral upward instead of the spiral downward.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
And it can
Yeah.
be a small, like you said, it can be a very small thing that shifts someone from a negative spiral into a positive spiral, or vice versa, because it can be a very fine balance. So you've got to be careful with where your attention goes, I guess, is to bring us back to the original ideas of attention and things like that. Where your attention goes matters, because if you put the wrong thing at the wrong time, it can destabilize you and put you into a negative spiral. And it could just be a small thing. Whereas if
Mhm.
you concentrate, if your attention is brought to one small success, like you have in your workshops, then that small success can then spiral into put you on a positive path. So where you put your attention really does matter. Yeah.
Totally. Totally. I love how you put that. That's fantastic, man. So, um, let me ask you this: if anyone wants to know more about what you do, um, the Parkour Generations, where do they go? Where's the best place to get information?
Well, if you just Google Parkour Generations, you'll come up with a load of websites for us, depending on where
True.
you are in the
Yeah.
world. So parkourgenerations.com is our main site, but then we've got branches in London, Boston, Rio, wherever. So you can probably find a local branch. But parkourgenerations.com is our sort of central website, or adaptqualifications.com if you're interested in the education pathways. And if you want to connect with me more, I have a website, danedwards.com, which is a very basic site, but it's basically a blog site, just has some writings and articles. So you can find me there. Yeah. But if you just Google Parkour Generations, you'll find us.
That's great, man. Well, listen, I'm going to sign off in a minute, partially because I have something I need to go somewhere soon. If you don't mind, Dan, after I say goodbye to people, just hang on with me for like 1 minute, okay?
Sure, man. Yeah.
Just
It's
have a
been a pleasure
question.
as always, though. Yeah.
Oh yeah, man. I just want to make sure. See if there's
And
any.
thank you to everyone else for listening in and sending questions and stuff. It's really good. Really good.
Yeah, the live things have been pretty cool. I like the ability to. Okay, yeah, we've got all the questions here and there, so we're good. Yeah, thank you. So first of all, thank you to Dan for joining me. It's been too long, so we'll do it again
Pleasure.
sooner than later. Yeah. I always feel that's just
For
it's
sure, man.
so good
Thank
to
you.
talk with you, man. It's so good. We got to work on a project together at some point in time. We'll make
I'm
it
sure we
happen.
will. Post apocalypse, I'm sure we will.
Yes, we will. Will. And so thank you so much, Dan. And hang with me when I sign off. But thank you, everyone watching. It's good to see Amy, Joel. I will email you later today. Um, Jan, everybody, thanks so much for watching. Really appreciate you tuning in and have a fantastic day and stay moving and
Yes.
put a little bit of risk into it. All right. All right, I'll
Take
see you
care.
later. Take it easy, folks. Um, actually, here's what I'm going to do. I'll stop the live stream. Okay, so we'll have actually people who might still be watching just on Zoom for a minute. I just really just want to say thanks, man. I really respect you greatly. You inspire me uh, a lot,
That's very
man.
kind of you, man. But yeah, you're doing the inspirational work. So and the book, you're producing a new book. That's really cool. Reach a lot of people that way.
This one is entitled Parkinson's Empowerment Training,
Awesome.
so it
When,
really applies to all people.
when's it going
And
to be finished? When's your target for that?
I would have been done had COVID not taken
Mm,
over for a while. My brain. I started working on it again over the weekend and a lot on Friday. I think that realistically, I think it should hit Amazon on the 15th or so of February.
soon. That's
Yeah,
great.
we're probably 4 weeks away max, and that's like for real. Because now that I got this done once with the first book, which was massive, the
Mm,
second the second book is going to be about half the length. Um, Dimension wise, it's going to be the same, the 5.5 by 8.5 inches.
mm,
Um, half the number of pages with much more in depth about brain stuff mostly. It really has so much to do with that, and of course
yeah,
movement. But there's a support website that goes with it. So from either book, people can go there and get all the information and like videos to watch that will support what I write about, because it's hard to demonstrate things in words.
yeah.
So uh yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And then I have about 15 stories from people who are live with Parkinson's, or they're a caregiver, or they're a doctor, or a physical therapist, or a trainer. And these are stories of hope and inspiration, man. They're like, some of them make you cry, but it's beautiful because they're people whose lives have changed because they decided to take action and fight back. And when I say that, it's not like they're in a fight. They are, but the mindset is positive. It's a
Mm,
good fight.
right.
It's I want to do the good fight, and I have decided I'll do everything I can to always be able to control my movement and my memory and this and that to the best of my ability. And they do stuff and they write about it, and it's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great, man.
So
Very cool.
awesome, brother. Well, listen, I'll gonna do a little bit of stuff to the video here. It's just a tiny bit to edit, probably on the front end where there was a long pause, and so the Zoom version, I'm just gonna put it up on YouTube, if that's cool, and
Go for it, man.
I'll send you a link, and you can share it around when you want.
Please do.
I know this streamed on my personal Facebook page, so um, it may be streaming on yours if I did it right. But feel free to share. You don't have to, but you can if you want. Obviously,
Happy to, man. Yeah,
it's
of course.
a real pleasure, man. Real
And
pleasure.
thank you. Yeah, thank you as well. Always good to catch up. And yeah, good luck with the book, man. I can't wait
Thank
to read
you.
it.
Are you going to write a book? I think you should write a book.
I read another book. I've written a book already, but
Oh, you did?
uh,
I didn't know
yeah,
that.
the Parkour Handbook I wrote in 2009, I think 2008.
Oh, I got to look that
So
up and get it. Yeah.
it was the first book on parkour. So that is still out there. And I did a couple of sort of books for young readers, parkour books for young readers, kind of
Oh,
to
wow.
just to help kids that don't really like to read, give them something. So I did a couple of books there with some series that do that. But I haven't written any books for a long time because I've been too busy. But the plan is to write more. Yes, the plan is definitely
So
to
are
write more.
those books available? Can you
Yeah,
buy
you
them
can get them
anywhere?
on Amazon. If you just put my name into Amazon, it will come up. So
Oh,
Parkour
good.
Free Running Handbook is the main one, I suppose. But it's old, man. So it's like 12 years old now. So I meant to have written another book since, but I haven't had time.
No,
Yeah.
you're busy.
So
Well,
hopefully soon.
good. That's great, man. I'll look on Amazon for those. All right. Well, thanks for taking all this time, man. I didn't know how long we would go.
It's a pleasure, man.
I'm
Really
so
a
glad
pleasure.
we got to talk for like an hour and a half. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
And good to see that you recovered. Great stuff.
Yeah, I'm getting there. I'm definitely getting there. I'm not going to let it beat me. That's for sure.
You know,
So
you clearly conquered it. So that's good.
go out and do what I got to do, and then come back and shovel.
Yeah, and
Yep.
remember, it's good training.
All right, brother. Well, listen. I love you, man. You're the best. I'll talk to you
See you,
soon.
man.
Okay.
Take
All
it easy,
right.
brother.
Yeah, you got it. See you later.
Ciao.
Hey, everyone. Thanks. He's amazing. Valentina, Joel, Alexander, you're here. Thanks for joining. I just love talking with Dan. All right. Catch you later. Bye bye.